BYU shocked the college football world last weekend when they destroyed number 13 Kansas State at home 38-9, winning in all three phases of the game. The Cougars are in year 2 of their Big 12 membership, were projected to finish towards the bottom of the conference. Now, they are being considered as Big 12 conference title contenders. This is how BYU is shocking college football. But before we get into this, if you enjoy college football content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Also, let me know how well you think BYU does the rest of the season, leaving their record prediction in the comment section below. Coming off the 2020 college football season, which saw BYU finish the year 11-1, led by quarterback Zach Wilson, with their lone loss coming to Coastal Carolina during an amazing game during the hectic season, they would finish 11th in the AP poll and followed that up with another double-digit winning season, going 10-3 in 2021. Things were looking good for the 2022 season, with starting quarterback Jaren Hall returning after throwing for 2,583 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. They did lose running back Tyler Algiers, who rushed for 1,606 yards and 23 touchdowns during the 2021 season. BYU entered the 2022 season as the 25th ranked team in the nation and upset number 9 Baylor at home in double overtime 26-20. This skyrocketed them up to number 12 in the rankings and set up a huge matchup against number 25 Oregon and Eugene. The Ducks would blow BYU out 41-20, but they would rebound with back-to-back wins over Wyoming and Utah State to start the season 4-1. A 4-game losing streak to Notre Dame, Arkansas, a blowout loss to Liberty, and East Carolina derailed their season, but they finished the year on a 4-game winning streak, including a win in the New Mexico Bowl over SMU to finish the season 8-5. Heading into the 2023 season, there'd be a lot of change for the BYU program. They would join the Big 12, returning to a conference for the first time since leaving the Mountain West after 2010. They also saw the departure of Jaren Hall, who threw for 3,171 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions in 2022. There were hopes for a strong season for the Cougars, but many knew there would be some growing pains in year 1 of Big 12 membership. They brought in former USC and Pittsburgh quarterback Keaton Slovis and hoped to get their running game going after drop-offs from 2021 to 2022. Alarm bells would start going off when BYU only beat a brand new FBS member Sam Houston 14-0 in the season opener, but still started the season 3-0, including a 38-31 road win over Arkansas. They then fell to Kansas 38-27 on the road, but rebounded with a win over Cincinnati at home 35-27. They just needed 2 wins for bowl eligibility with a 4-1 start to the year, but then reality would set in and things would become a disaster. Following the Cincinnati game, they would get blown out by TCU 44-11. They followed that up with a win over Texas Tech 27-14, meaning they just needed one more win for bowl eligibility. It would get blown out by number 7 Texas 35-6, followed by a 37-7 loss to West Virginia. Things were not going great, but they were still sitting at 5-4. Win one of those 3 remaining games, and the blowout losses to Texas and West Virginia would all but be forgotten. But then they would get blown out by Iowa State at home 45-13. Bowl eligibility looked unlikely heading into their final 2 games of the season. A matchup at home against number 14 Oklahoma and on the road at number 21 Oklahoma State, who was fighting for a spot in the Big 12 title game. Many expected both those games to end in blowout fashion. BYU would give Oklahoma a fight, resulting in a 31-24 loss to the Sooners. Then they would take a 3-score lead over Oklahoma State that they would later blow, leading to them falling to the Cowboys 40-34 in double overtime to end the season 5-7. It would be their first time missing a bowl game since 2017. While a 5-7 season was a disappointing year for BYU, it didn't represent everything, as BYU would end up playing the 6th hardest schedule in college football, according to Strength of Schedule rankings. Of the 14 Big 12 schools, only Texas, who had the 2nd hardest, and Texas Tech, who had the 3rd hardest, had more challenging schedules than BYU. BYU had the most difficult schedule of the 4 newcomers by a wide margin. Houston's schedule ranked 28th nationally, while UCF's schedule and Cincinnati's schedule ranked 41st and 42nd respectively. There were some changes that still needed to be made though. In 2023, BYU only averaged 104.3 rushing yards per game, while in 2022 they averaged 176.6 rushing yards per game. That compared to 188.1 rushing yards per game in 2021 and 192.1 rushing yards per game in 2020. When BYU ran the ball well, they won games. When they didn't, they struggled. Heading into the 2024 season, BYU knew they needed to get the running game going better. Although top returning running back LJ Martin began to deal with shoulder issues, BYU knew they would have a stacked running back room this season as 5 running backs have received 10 carries or more through the first 4 games. Although Martin missed the last 2 games with a sprained ankle, Sione Moa told Deseret News, "We have a lot of great running backs. There is no end to BYU's supply of running backs. Our running back depth is deep, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. And coming into BYU, I had mentors like LJ, Falu, Anak. They helped me prepare for this stage, this moment. If I were to go down, Poka would pick up. If Poka went down, anyone else would pick up." Coming into the season, BYU is projected to finish towards the bottom of the Big 12, with Sports Illustrated having them ranked number 11 in the power rankings for the conference, and Phil Steele projecting them to finish 14th overall in the conference. Sports Illustrated wrote in August, BYU was 2 plays away from being 7-5 instead of 5-7. BYU cleans up the catastrophic mistakes that plagued them throughout the 2023 season. The Cougars will position themselves to get back to the postseason. The 3 big question marks entering the season were whether they could get production from the quarterback position, could they get the run game going, and could they stop the run and get to the quarterback on defense. The Big 12 is also seeing additions of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and Arizona State heading into this year. BYU's defense coordinator Jay Hill told KSL Sports, "These teams that are coming into the Big 12, I think they're going to have a little bit of a rude awakening on how physical it is. I think 5 or 6 times we faced number 1 running backs in the country. It was like one guy leading it, then another guy leading it, and then another. The best back we faced last year, Jonathan Brooks, at Texas, tore his ACL, and he was still the first back taken off the board this year. He tore his ACL 4 months earlier and was still a second-round draft pick. There are big-time backs in this league. That probably caught me off guard more than anything is just how good the running backs were." BYU started the 2024 season off with a 41-13 win over Southern Illinois, setting up a big test against SMU on the road, who was viewed as a possible contender by some to be in the ACC title picture. They would survive a dogfight with the Mustangs, beating them 18-15 to get a marquee win to start the season 2-0. They followed that up with a 34-14 win over Wyoming on the road, setting up a big night game against Kansas State. The Wildcats came into the game ranked number 13th in the nation and were favorites to walk away with a big road win. But playing at Lavelle Edwards Stadium at night can always lead to some chaos, and Scott Fisher and I texted each other all week long, talking about how we felt an upset was coming. BYU entered the game as 6.5-point underdogs, and they were going to need a few things to go right to win this game. They needed to pressure Avery Johnson. They needed to stop the 3-headed rushing attack of DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards, and Johnson. They needed to protect Jake Retzlaff, who was also needing to step up and impress. I thought it was going to be a close game, and it looked like it was going to be that way as the first half came to an end. Kansas State had 2 long drives to start the game, getting a field goal on both of them. BYU would then get field goals themselves to make it 6-3 with 2:10 left in the half. A good old-fashioned fight going back and forth. But as midnight approached on the East Coast and my eyes began to get heavier and heavier, chaos would ensue. BYU would force a fumble and return it for a touchdown on the Wildcats' next drive, and then BYU would pick Johnson off and Retzlaff connected with Chase Roberts to give the Cougars a 17-16 lead heading into halftime, scoring all their points in the last 2.5 minutes of the half. They would cruise to a 38-9 win over number 13 Kansas State, shocking many. The defense stepped up throughout the night, not letting Kansas State into the end zone throughout the game, and was a bend not break defense. BYU's win also means a Kansas State fan needs to stuff a Taco Bell burrito where the sun don't shine. It was BYU's first major win as a member of the Big 12, and has turned them into being viewed as from a bottom feeder of the league into a conference title contender. They entered this week's matchup against Baylor ranked in the AP Top 25, and their ESPN FBI win projections jumped from 4.7 to 8.3 wins. BYU is 24-3 in night games over their last 27 primetime matchups, will be playing at noon against Baylor. They have home games against Arizona, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Houston, and away games against Baylor, UCF, Utah, and Arizona State to close out the season. Could this be a special year? Only time will tell. But what do you think? How well does BYU do this season? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out one of my other videos YouTube thinks you will love right here. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to embrace the grind.